Hi, everyone. My name is Grant Kastner. I am Extempore's community manager alongside Ms. Lisa Parra Staves here for our most recent webinar using Extempore for AP. Like I said, I am our community manager. I teach Chinese at St. Michael Albertville High School here in Minnesota. And Lisa, I'll let you do a little bit of an introduction yourself.
Thanks, Grant. I teach Spanish at Wayzata High School in Plymouth, Minnesota. I'm also the bilingual SEAL program lead for Wayzata Public Schools, as well as a subject matter expert and bilingual SEALs specialist for Extempore.
Thank you so much, Lisa. So without further ado, let's get on in to see what we are going to be doing today. Our session intro and session objectives. Lisa and I already talked about our backgrounds and what we do here, both at Extempore and in our own classrooms. We're going to talk a little bit about teaching pre-AP skills, because our students don't just jump right into AP. They have to take a lot of language classes before they get into the AP levels. We'll talk about what skills are needed. We'll talk about interpretive, interpersonal, and presentational, and how we can build those skills, as well as simulated conversations. And then we'll get into talking about Extempore, the platform here presented to you today, and using it for AP exams. We'll discuss the 4 skills and the 3 modes of communication, spontaneous responses, and then sharing assessments as well, along with articulation in our departments. Then finally, once we've talked about that, we'll talk about preparing students for AP type questions as I show some examples on Extempore. I'll talk a little bit about the input-based reading and listening comprehension, and Lisa will give us some more specific examples that she does in her classroom. I'll show those on Extempore of simulated conversations and cultural comparisons. And of course, if we have, with the time that we have at the end of the presentation, we will absolutely have a Q&A for any questions or comments, concerns that you have about Extempore or AP practice or anything like that. We'll be happy to answer. All right, so if we look at the AP assessment, just looking at it overall and understanding what we need, what is on the AP language and culture exam? What do we need to prepare for? Well, first off, interpretive communication, print text. Simple description of the AP exam says this section consists of a variety of authentic print materials, journalistic and literary text, announcements, advertisements, letters, charts, maps, and tables, all things that students are interpreting. And at the same time, they'll also have multiple choice, audio and other print sources. Again, interviews, podcasts, public service announcements, conversations. This is all audio, and it's divided into 2 subsections. So then, for interpretive communication with print text, the skill that they'll need, interpretive reading, right? And then for audio and print as well, they'll also need more of interpretive listening and reading. Moving on then, part 2, if we talk about what's on, again, the AP language and cultural exam, there's a second part of free response and written, presentational aspect, reading and replying to an email, talking about an argumentative essay, and then some free response and spoken. And this is where things get a bit complicated, but where we specialize here at Extempore, talking about simulated conversations and cultural comparisons as well. So when we talk about free response written, what skills does the student need? They need interpersonal and presentational writing, and then free response spoken. So the script, they need interpersonal and presentational speaking. Right, so this is just a very brief overview of what's on the AP exam, and just a reminder for us of the things that we need to prepare and the skills that we need to build within our students for them to succeed on this exam. So with this as our foundation, before Lisa jumps into it, I want to just ask a poll for all of you on teaching AP skills. What strategies or tips do you all have for teaching the previously mentioned AP skills, whether it's interpretive reading, interpretive listening, interpersonal speaking, interpersonal writing, presentational speaking? What strategies do you guys use in your classroom? And maybe Lisa, you can pitch in on how you teach AP skills. Feel free to share in the chat. And then I will hand it over to her.
I think while folks are entering their ideas in the chat, I'm just going to take over and share my screen. We'll transition.
So we have a couple of responses. Catherine says each lesson unit, even in level 1, ends with an oral test. Awesome. Questions you should be able to ask and answer in the target language. Very simple, but definitely a needed skill. Thank you for sharing, Catherine. other strategies that we have. Lisa, do you have anything you would want to add before you get into what you do?
I think if I say too much, it's just going to be my part of the presentation. You guys can probably do this for me. We're all subject matter experts here.
Wendy responds, she says, I find that if I ask students to talk with each other, they sneak into English. If I ask them to record their spoken conversation, then they stick in the target language. Ooh, very interesting.
That's a really good point. So sneak. That's really good.
Lisa, are you ready to present? I don't know if you're not showing right. Okay.
I know I'm not yet.
Okay. Katie adds, starting with the novice level, news of the week, reading headlines, subtitles, making predictions. Awesome, love that. Listening, beginning novice levels with authentic videos, audio, etc. Awesome. These are great responses. Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Wendy. Thank you, Catherine, all for sharing. This is good.
All right.
All right, we'll hand it over to Lisa, and she will share her expertise with us.
All righty. Thank you, friends. For those of you familiar and guided by ACTFL, a lot of my strategies and information I've learned over the years from ACTFL, from some of their publications, from Paul Sandrock, and from, of course, my brilliant colleagues as well. With Interpretive, we always want to remember to choose authentic sources. Authentic audio, video, written texts. These are sources made by the target language community for the target language community. We want to edit the task, not the source. So we could use the same source. It's for students in level 1 all the way through AP. We're just asking them to do different things with that source and comprehend that source in different ways based on what's appropriate for the student's proficiency level. So although this particular webinar is directed at AP and preparing students for the AP exam, these strategies we can be implementing in all of our levels and spiraling topics through all of our levels. As AP preparation does not start in April or May, it starts the moment the kids walk in the classroom, whether AP is their goal or not. Also, like Grant had mentioned, non-literary texts, charts, tables, graphs. Here's an example of some of those. We've got a menu, infographics, a school schedule, any sort of information that's not a narrative, not like our stereotypical article. We want to also start practicing combining listening and reading for that second multiple choice part of the test. So what I mean through this is that students can have 2 sources. Here's an example of something I actually did in class last week, where the students use information from a video and an article in this case, or a fragment of an article, to provide the main idea of both sources in Spanish. So they're taking information from 2 places, comprehending it using different strategies, and then synthesizing that information into one coherent main idea in the target language. We can practice throughout all of our levels the time constraints, and I like to do that on my formative assessments, so we're practicing and they're not getting penalized for these little mistakes that will naturally happen when they get nervous under a certain time constraint. Also, you'll see a lot of things I do and things that I recommend are related or directly linked to integrated performance assessments. Here in Wayzata Public Schools, our language teachers use IPAs, integrated for performance assessments, as our common assessments and summative as well as formative. And we found that the skills that are reinforced and practiced through IPAs get students ready for AP level language production at all of our levels. So for an interpretive IPA, students are guided from literal comprehension through interpretive comprehension. So they're starting with skimming for keywords, main ideas, supporting details, guessing the meaning of unfamiliar words based on the context, and then more into some AP level questioning where we would expect students to talk about or identify the author's perspective, organizational features, what's the purpose, what's the tone, symbolism, themes coming up, inference questions, cultural comparisons. In my class, I think it's important for students to work through their interpretive skills, not only individually, but also in pairs and in groups when you're helping each other and bouncing ideas off each other. You have more input than just your own. And sometimes to keep students motivated, having them choose their own texts, what they're interested in, helps keep it meaningful for the students and helps keep them engaged. Moving on to the interpersonal mode. When we're having conversations, I always want to keep a central focus on a communicative purpose. What is it that the students are talking about and why? Is this meaningful for them? I assess my students' interpersonal skills summatively and formatively through IPAs. Again, here I'm looking at their language function. How comfortable are they with the task? Are they able to what degree are they able to fulfill the task? Their text type, are they speaking in words, utterances, lists, chunks, phrases, complete sentences, connected sentences, compound sentences, leading into paragraph-like discourse? Their communication strategies, how they handle the situation if there's a breakdown in communication, what they're able to do to help one another stay in the target language and they themselves to stay in the target language as well. Comprehensibility, who can understand the student? Is their pronunciation heavily influenced by another language? Or do you think you could drop them on the street of any target culture and they could fend for themselves? Could they get themselves into trouble as well as out of trouble? Also, their language control. This is their accuracy with their grammar, their vocabulary, the vehicle in making meaning. Giving students a meaningful context is sometimes a challenge. It directly relates with communicative purpose there. It helps when we're getting to know the kids. When we're talking with students and getting them to talk, I see that language teachers oftentimes know the students the best. We know what's going on in their lives because they talk about it. We give them opportunities to talk about prom, to talk about what they did over the weekend. What are their plans for after they graduate? So we're getting a glimpse into their lives. We can use that if they're talking about it in their daily lives. Let's just do that in the target language. Let's give them a task that relates to what they're interested in. Our conversations as well, it's important that they're natural. Conversations are going to be spontaneous. They're going to have mistakes. They're going to be informal. I don't want my students to provide me some dictation that they've scripted out with a friend. That's not natural. I tell them, hey, we go to lunch, we sit down with our friends, and we start talking. We don't stop the conversation because, oh, I didn't know you were going to ask me that. We didn't prepare for this ahead of time, so I can't answer that question for you. That's not natural. It's going to be spontaneous. There are going to be hiccups. So how do we manage those hiccups? Through celebrating our mistakes. I want my students to be comfortable making mistakes and to do those without penalty. Only in our correcting our mistakes can our students learn and grow and push into the next proficiency level. And that's a part of natural learning as well. We need to learn how to pick ourselves up and keep walking before we can run. Right? That's the road to proficiency is pretty bumpy. And it seems like when students are gaining a new skill, they're working on a new skill, what they may have already mastered starts to break down a little bit because now they're focusing on something new. Their brain is taking on and acquiring new language and new skills. So these mistakes, I want the mistakes to happen. When I'm hearing mistakes, I know that they're learning something new. I want to give students multiple turns, multiple opportunities to talk. I know that our administrators or people that observe us or our old professors' lessons that we have in our minds might be saying, oh, talk to every single student every single day, engage every single person during every class period. Sometimes stopping with one student and going deeper gives everyone else a really good model, especially at the AP level, of intermediate, high, advanced, low interpersonal conversations, interpersonal language. Not just asking everybody, what did you do this weekend? But what did you do this weekend? Where did you go? How did you feel about that? Do you recommend that other people do that too? Why not? Really digging in to meaningful conversation with a few students. Providing exemplars when we're getting into an assessment, like the AP exam. We all know we've got like downloadable practice available from the College Board or exams that are released from previous years. Having some students record examples and then playing through those with my class, talking about what's a strong example, what is this lacking, how is this good, how could we make it better, how can we make this the best. So we know what a 3 sounds like, we know what a 4 sounds like, we know what a 5 sounds like on the AP rubric. So building as we go, like a repertoire or a gallery of examples. Here, I find Extempore is really slick with practicing simulated conversations, the video chat function, I'm sure Grant will talk about as well, and adhering to the time constraints. Like here's a minute to read the directions, a minute to read the introduction, and then 20 seconds to record each answer. I really like the way Extempore can facilitate this. Also, I like how it gives me the students' recordings after the fact and how I can get through those quicker than I have in the past. It's really efficient. We can start interpersonals at the novice level by giving students infogap activities, getting into the Japanese and Chinese language and culture exams, using pictures as prompts, and then modeling that direct AP style with our intermediate and pre-advanced courses. letting conversation come organically, a think, pair, share. This could also be like an organic IPA where the students listen to something or they read something and then they talk about it. They answer questions, they ask questions, and then they share with the class or they share with another group or they share with the teacher. So there's interpretive, interpersonal, and presentational modes going on naturally, organically, all at once. And into our, our presentational mode, again, we want to give students, provide them authentic cultural contexts within which to work. In AP, we have our 6 global themes. These can be spiraling and should be spiraling throughout all of our levels, not only AP. We want to make presentational process oriented, where we have drafting and peer editing and proofreading, using their resources to help guide them, showing their best language. In my class, I also do this through IPAs, where I'm looking at similar goals as the interpretive, but also instead of communication strategies, we're looking at impact. How does the student engage their audience? When I'm giving my students feedback in presentational mode, I mean, as well as all of their modes, I want to give them feedback about their skills and about the message itself, in addition to like their grammar structures or their accuracy. We as language teachers are really good with grammar. We're really good with vocab and accuracy. And the feedback that can really help improve students' skills and what they're able to do with the language is feedback that's focused on their skills, feedback that's focused on their message. Again, providing exemplars, presentations from old students, or if there's one that's really good, have a kid go and record it in the hall. Like, oh, I missed that. I really like to use that in the future. Could you go and record this for me? And year after year, we'll build up a repertoire of some examples. And it's important that we're showing kids not only the best of the best, but also examples that are lacking. AP as well provides examples for us. In my class right now in AP, of course, I provide time parameters and I encourage the students to do that as well as they're practicing at home or as I'm assigning homework, but in the early levels too. We can provide the framework, provide the boundaries of time, but we don't have to penalize for maybe going a little under the time or going over the time. We can be flexible with this. The idea is to get them to start feeling the timing. Some of us might have some feelings as well about allowing resources for students as they're preparing presentations or maybe even during a presentation. For me, I think about what is natural for the student and what mimics the AP format. On the AP format, I know that the students have 4 minutes to prepare, and during that time, they can write all over their prep sheet, they can brainstorm, they can start scripting something out. And when it comes time to record, they probably have something in front of them that they're going to be reading. So I say, okay, that's okay. As long as that's rehearsed, as long as it's your language, as long as this is practiced ahead of time. Let's face it, as teachers, we can hear when the language is not the student's authentic language. You know, if it's way too perfect, we know that they've probably been getting outside help. Or on the other end, if they sound robotic or very uncomfortable, or I find when students start to breathe in unnatural places, I know that they need to practice more, and this might not be their own language. We know, we get that feeling like something's not right. But during that process where they're writing and drafting and proofreading and editing, I give them a structure and they work within that structure to eventually present to me a writing or a spoken presentation. Again, not only by themselves, but work with a partner, work in a group. Lots of different input, lots of perspectives at the table. And these don't need to be summative, big, stress-inducing presentations. Presentational writing or presentational speaking can be a warm-up activity, a bell ringer, an exit card at the end of your lesson or the end of a unit. It can be a self-reflection, a private journal entry. It could be a self-assessment. I find that presentations are something that stress out my students the most and provide the most anxiety. Like public speaking is one of the most popular fears that people have. We don't have to make it something huge and stress inducing. So I'm going to pass it back to Grant to work in with Extempore and how wonderfully this platform helps all of us.
Thank you. Lisa, before I begin on this portion, would you like to share the poll that we have?
Yes. So we're going to go back to the chat. Thank you. So other things, how do you normally prepare students for more of the complex AP sections like simulated conversations or something that might feel stress inducing or anxiety inducing or unnatural? Again, let's go to the chat and share some ideas. And Grant, at the same time, I'll stop sharing so we can transition as well.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. So yeah, like Lisa said, I'm going to showcase a few things on Extempore, and then if you can insert the poll question in the chat, how do you guys normally prepare your students for the more sort of tech heavy, sort of more complex portions like the simulated conversation, cultural comparison? What do you all do in your classes to help your students build the skills they need on those portions? Let us know. Good.
And Grant, if you want to take it going, I'll keep an eye on the chat.
Oh, sure. Well. Yeah, of course. I'm trying to just get my bearings here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Moving my windows and so many. Okay, Lisa will man in the chat. That's totally fine. So I am going to demonstrate a little bit about the Extempore platform and the ways that you can use Extempore to build not just speaking skills, but reading, listening, and writing skills as well, all 4 skills in preparation for the AP assessment, in leading to the AP assessment, and then also for the practice that students need, the actual AP practice, what that they need. So Extempore, just as a way of introduction, Extempore is an assessment platform. I already mentioned you can assess reading, you can assess writing, you can assess listening, you can assess speaking, all 4 skills, like I said, and all 3 modes of communication: interpersonal communication, interpretive communication, and presentational communication. So I'm going to demonstrate right now is a few different reading questions. These are just unique reading questions and the types of assessments that you can use to build reading skills with your students. I did these in a recent blog that we published. So here I have a basic text. Again, this is just an example. The student has a text and they have to finish the text. So this is one way students can show comprehension. I have it in English and Chinese just for the sake of the presentation. But the student would read and then they have to finish based on what they understood in the text. And if they understood the text properly, accurately, well, then they'll be able to properly finish the response, finish the story, and show their comprehension in the target language. So that's one example. I call it say something, where they finish. And the second example I have is simple. It's a paraphrasing. The student is doing this actually in the shared language. So if you teach Spanish or French or German or Japanese, whatever the language of instruction is in your school, like most likely English, the student would summarize and paraphrase what they read in the text. And I like this little structure that we have here. Somebody wants blank, but blank, so blank. Most stories can usually fit into that framework, right? For example, in this story, Xiaoming wants to go to the park, but it's going to rain, so he decides to go home. Again, just another way of getting students to showcase their interpretive skills. Third example I have, choosing a title for the text. These are just basic interpretive, different types of questions that you can ask students, as opposed to just a basic, okay, what happened in the text? So giving a title is another example. Answering the question based on the mood, right? So the title, along with describing the mood of the characters, these are both inference-based assessments. They're not explicit. It's implicitly inferred by the student. What question can be answered based on this text? Again, as opposed to just asking a question, say, oh, what happened in the text? And you have a multiple choice. Give them the question, okay, which one of these questions could be answered in the text? Again, another interpretive question. Another one I have is basically true or false, pretty bare bones. We all know that one. A close exercise, CLOZE, which is just a fancy term for fill in the blank. The student has to know these words in order to do this accurately. So the close is really nice. And on Extempore, you can add as many choices as you want. Here I have 6. So the student really has to know what the right one is in order to get it right. The last one I have before I get into the essay prompt is sequencing. I really like sequencing because here, especially like Lisa has mentioned, at advanced levels, if you take a target text and then you use different sentences that can describe what occurred in that text, and the student has to sequence and say, okay, what happened in the correct order of this text? And it's the student showing their comprehension of not only what happened in the text, but of the target language as well. So within this reading assessment, I have a presentational writing prompt, and just so on Extempore, you can create all sorts of different prompts. Here I have an email for a student responds to in Chinese. That is a type of prompt found on the AP assessments. So as a teacher, you can create a prompt, add in the text that you have, and have your students type in their response appropriately. And then I will later show what the grading looks like for the teacher to give feedback on these types of questions. So I've done a few interpersonal. I want to switch over to, interpretive based, whether it's the interpretive reading or this type of interpersonal writing, which has a bit of an interpretive aspect. Are any questions on these before I move on to the more complex simulated conversation pieces? I'll take just a short 5 seconds of order. Okay, moving on then. So I've talked about interpretive types of assessments, different ways you can build student skills with reading assessments on Extempore. But as Lisa mentioned earlier, we also pride ourselves in the variety of speaking assessments that you can do on Extempore. And it is not limited to the simulated conversations that are part of the AP language assessment. So here I'm going to show a basic example. And when the students do these the first time on Extempore, it can be a bit challenging to get the sort of the mechanism down for what they have to do. Obviously, with more practice, they'll understand what they have to do. But here we have in the description, we have the direction of what the students need to do when they click on the prompt. And you'll see how this works. So the student is going to click record, and they'll click on the audio. That way the recording catches the audio, and then they'll listen and they'll respond and they can speak. And the prompt will catch both the recording and the student's response as well. Here is what that looks like. So it's a lockable question, which means once the student joins, if the student X's out of the browser, if they close the tab, if their phone dies or anything like that, whatever device they're doing it on, if they leave the Extempore platform, they will be locked out and they won't be able to do it again. So I'm going to click OK. So now here you'll see I have my audio prompts waiting to be played, and I have the student recording here. So in order to catch this audio file, and for the computer to catch the audio here, I'm going to click record here. Give me a countdown. And then once this starts, I can click on the audio file here and click play. And then as this audio file plays, I can respond back to it in the target language.
Hola, ¿Cómo estás? ¿Puedes ayudarme con un proyecto sobre un país hispano? No sé por dónde empezar. ¿Qué me aconsejas?
Oh boy. Hola, estoy bien. Te, te aconsejo buscar por el internet por unos países buenos que puedes viajar.
Genial. ¿Me puedes contar de algún lugar turístico de un país en Latinoamérica, por ejemplo?
Venezuela. So you get the idea, right? I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but the student hits play, then the audio recording goes, and then they listen and they speak, just like a simulated conversation. And as a teacher, when you're creating the prompt, you'll leave space in between the speaking so that the student can respond. And then the student will respond, catches the audio, and then the student, once they're done, you'll notice there's no re-record button here. Normally there is with an audio response. The only thing that the student can do here from here is submit their attempt. So they click submit and it's done. Now they have to wait for instructor grading. There are two other examples, number 2 and 3, that I won't showcase, but they're available for you to import directly into your Extempore class from our blog and from the slides that we have. But I also do want to show a very simple, the other one, the cultural comparison prompt. So here we have time to review, 240 seconds, that's 4 minutes, and time to respond, 120 seconds. So as Lisa was mentioning, when you do the AP practice, you want to make sure the students are timed and they know how much time they have to prepare, how much time they have to respond. Are they taking notes? Are they going to, what are they going to use to prepare their response on the assessment? And we'll see what this looks like. So I'm going to click OK. And so now, since there's no audio file to play, the time to review starts counting down right away. Here's the prompt. How do the holidays that are celebrated in your culture and French culture demonstrate the values of each culture? Use specific examples to support your response. So this was a prompt that I sort of came up with for cultural comparison. But again, you get the idea. It's very basic. The student can see the prompt here. You can have it in English, have it in target language, however you want it to be presented to the student. And the student can take their notes as the time to review is counting down. And once they're ready, they can click record. I'll say, I don't need to prepare. I'm all good. I can speak. And now I can start speaking French and comparing holidays throughout the different cultures. And I can see the timer counting down. I can see what I'm producing. And once I'm done, I click stop. And I click submit attempts. And I'm done, just like that. I see a few things in the chat. I'm just going to see here. Okay, cool. So I've shown some interpretive questions so far. I've shown the email response. We've seen the simulated conversation. We've also seen a very brief example of the cultural comparison. And now what I'd like to show very quickly, just before we get into our Q&A, is the grading page of Extempore and what it looks like from the student, from the teacher's perspective, once a student has submitted a response on the platform. So I'm going to click view. I'm in my Extempore AP class on the grading side. This is the teacher side of the platform. And now I can see that my student community manager, he submitted a response for the simulated conversation piece. And as Lisa mentioned, yeah, I can jump through and I can see which parts where the student was speaking. And so I don't have to listen to the whole thing. So click play. I can click on the audio file here in the target language.
¿Cómo estás? ¿Puedes ayudarme con...
Hola, estoy bien. See, so however you want, you can jump through it and you can save yourself some time listening to the students' responses. I have a rubric attached to this, so I can drag and I can say, wow, that student was amazing. Give him a 5, or I don't know, it wasn't too great. I'm going to give him a 3. And then you can give feedback, you can give text feedback. Wow, amazing. You can get audio feedback and video feedback as well, whatever your preference is for the student. I actually like giving audio feedback to my students. I make it feels a little bit more comfortable, or personal, when the teacher is speaking to you and the student can hear that. I think that's really nice. And then once you're done, you can click submit feedback and next question. And then that score is marked and the teacher moves right on to the next question that student submitted, the AP cultural comparison. And just like, as you see here, I can play back the student response. And now I can start speaking French and comparing holidays throughout the different cultures. And just like on the last one, I can give a score, I can leave feedback, and then submit, and I'm done. I have graded the assessment. So I've talked a lot. I've shown some examples of interpretive questions. I've shown email responses, simulated conversation, cultural comparison, all different types of assessments that you can do, all on Extempore. I don't want to go on and on. I'd love to take some questions that you all have to clarify whatever questions or concerns. that may have come up during the presentation. And Lisa is obviously available as well. And well, Lisa, I think we want to, before we jump out, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. We do want to show just a few of the tips that you had for Extempore. Do you want to take back sharing on that, Lisa?
Oh, it's okay. Sure.
Okay.
I can do that. I don't have much. I mean, you covered it when you were talking about your simulated conversations and your cultural comparison there. Let's see. In the chat, if you haven't been watching, Nereida asked about when we're listening to the student recordings, do we have to listen to the whole thing with the prompts and the students 20 seconds, or can you jump through it? And you can jump through it. I got through a class of 27 simulated conversations last night in less than an hour. Yeah, it was really awesome. You can see, like, when the students start speaking, those little sound lines go up, so I know right where I need to click to hear the student's voice again, and I just need to listen to what my student is saying. I don't have to listen to what the other pre-recorded side of the conversation is saying. I can also speed up the rate at which the student is speaking without making their voice sound funny, you know, like a chipmunk or like they're on helium, for lack of a better comparison.
So Lisa, if you don't mind me jumping in, I have a
Yep.
question here on, is it possible to access the examples that you show in Extempore to dig in ourselves a little bit? Yes, Lauren, absolutely there is. You can check out, so the reading assessments that I showed earlier are not directly in this presentation, but if you go to our blog, you can find them there right away. We have on this slide right here, and this will be sent out to everyone, to whoever, as long as you registered for the webinar, which you did because you're here. We're going to send this out. This email will be sent out along with the recording of the webinar, where you can access all of these examples and you can import them directly into your Extempore account. You can play with them and do whatever you want with them once you have them. So yeah, we have all sorts of resources. We have a blog on AP. You can see it right here. I will embed this webinar recording right here at the top of the blog page so that you can watch it again and highlight all the favorite things that you heard Lisa said. And you can scroll through and see all of the examples that we have to help you understand how to best use Extempore for AP practice. So yeah, it'll be there, Lauren. And while we are here, just a very, very giant thank you to all of you who attended. Again, my name is Grant Castor, and a huge thanks to Miss Lisa for helping us with this presentation. We are here for any questions that you have, as we have been answering already. Make sure to give us a follow on social media and check out our lovely YouTube channel for anything else that you need and everything Extempore. Past webinars, short videos to understand the platform better, ways you can use it. Check it out. We are here, and thank you so much for attending. Lisa?
Yeah, and thank you, everybody. Thank you, Grant. I do want to go back and mention real quickly, Grant, since you're sharing, if you just want to go back to the previous slide where the links are.
Yes, of course.
You'll see the sample assessments and classes at the bottom. There's one with English audio. The very last one is English audio. So if your target language is not represented here with Spanish, Chinese, French, and German, you can import the English one and just translate it into your target language if that's what you want. And then you can back up, Grant, also to slide 13 real quickly, just as a summary. What we've covered, what we talked about. We've got our 6 AP themes that spiral throughout, hopefully throughout all of our courses. Our AP skills really are enhanced and strengthened, I found, through IPAs in my classroom. Remembering to give students real life settings, authentic sources, will help us provide meaningful context and communicative purpose for our students. And remember, the teacher's job is to give our students opportunities to practice their language, to give them the tools they need to do well. It's the student's job to use those tools and to take advantage of those opportunities. And Extempore is a really slick resource that helps streamline, it's a really good tool rather, to help streamline that learning and that practice. So questions, feel free to unmute your mic and you can talk, or if you wanted to just put it in the chat as well, that's always a very welcome option.
Well, unfortunately, Lisa, because it's a webinar, they can only type in the chat.
Never mind. I wish I could hear you and see you. It's not fair. The language teacher always wanting communication.
Yeah, thank you, Dora. Thank you, Lauren, for joining. Thank you, Katie. It's been really great having you. Thank you, Jian. And if you didn't know, this presentation will be recorded. We get asked that a lot. It will be on YouTube. You can watch it again and again and again. We'll wait about a minute or two, Lisa, and then we can wrap up.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Thank you, Nerida. Thank you, Genevieve.
Thanks, Francisco.
All right, Lisa. Looks like we are questionless. I will stop.
I guess so. I hope that's a good sign.
I think so. A lot of good comments.